Hello, and welcome to the Enterprise Automation Excellence Podcast, hosted by Enterprise Management Associates. As a leading IT analyst firm, we provide deep insights across IT and data management technologies. In this podcast, we explore how automation drives business processes, analytics, development, and infrastructure. Join hosts Dan Twing and Tom O'Rourke as they discuss the evolving automation landscape, share strategies to optimize your tools, and guide strategic decisions for your automation portfolio. Now, let's dive into the world of automation excellence.
Hello, and welcome to the Enterprise Automation Excellence Podcast. I'm Dan Twing, and I'm here with my co-host Tom O'Rourke. And today we're going to be discussing mainframe modernization and its relationship to digital transformation and broader automation topics. We got into this a little bit in our last episode, and you might ask yourself, what does that have to do with the transformation? Well, I had a suspicion, and Tom and I have talked about this a lot, and I've got a survey I just pulled out of the field on mainframe modernization, and I suspected that it's becoming a hotter topic because it's becoming a bigger roadblock to go further in digital transformation. And in fact, that's exactly what I found. Without getting into the specifics of this survey, I've only partially analyzed. Just want to kind of touch on the one data point, which really was, what's your motivation to be modernizing your mainframe? And for like 52%, it is 100% that I hit a roadblock on my transformation projects. And to get where I want to go, I need the mainframe to be modernized. And for another 39%, it's one of several key issues. So there may still be issues like staffing shortages with retirements and maybe other security issues, cost issues. So for 39%, it's a mix. But even in that mix, the transformation roadblock's a pretty significant one of those issues. So in total, that's like 91% of the market. There's only about 4% who said not at all, and 8% who's like, I've already done it, I'm past that. So for a lot of folks, this is the moment, and the moment is sort of a pause to deal with these issues on the mainframe so that you can execute the rest of your vision. Tom, how does that fit with folks you're talking to and what you see in the market?
It matches up very, very well with what I was hearing a few years ago and what I'm hearing today. Digital transformation has been a catalyst for driving deeper modernization. Just to pause for a moment, when we say digital transformation, we're talking about the type of large-scale business effort that is really focused on making a large change to the customer's experience, changing business processing, changing the mechanisms by which the business engages with the customer. This is digital transformation itself, is not just a new coat of paint. It's a significant change to the way the business runs. And it's a major driver for going deeper into technology modernization than we've gone before. If we look at the mainframe, over the past 30 years, there have been many efforts, I'll call them incremental efforts, to take the data that's in the mainframe and surface it out on PCs through pages in a browser, to be able to integrate the transactional processing of the mainframe into an overall workflow along the way. But the objective of a digital transformation effort, driving an improved customer experience, is now pushing much harder on modernization of the mainframe. And because Dan and I are here to talk about automation excellence, that push on the mainframe and modernization there has a deep impact on automation as well. Automation is in the middle of all of this. For automation leaders, this is a large scale change, and there is a need to continue to maintain highly reliable services while evolving to offer a new set of services. And although, the metaphor has been overused, this is one of those cases where the changes, the transformation efforts can be like changing the engine on a car while driving at 60 miles an hour. Dan, I know you've talked to some customers who are in the middle of this right now. What have you taken away from that?
Well, both in the conversations that I had at a recent conference where I got exposed to some end user folks who are, own the challenge of making this happen in their organizations, as well as some of the other data points in this survey. Folks are farther down the road in many cases than I might have expected, but certainly nowhere near done. Tom, you used a phrase earlier when we were chatting. Up till now, we've done just enough modernization. And I sort of related that to like just in time inventory, right? If you remember those terms, we did little things, little incremental things, maybe modernizing the database. And, I sort of phrased it in this survey two different ways. What have you been doing of the more traditional list of things? And 80% have modernized their mainframe database. They've either encapsulated it with another application or they've natively added APIs in. 60% have added APIs and about 30% just encapsulated it so that it could play nice with the cloud over the years. So we've done what I'm going to credit Tom as coining this phrase, just enough modernization. That's, been the mode of operation for 10, 15 years here. Each time a small roadblock got hit, one little thing allowed, just enough modernization to do the next step. But, you can only take those baby steps and deal on the edges for so long. Now we're pushing to such a radical shift in the business processes, the transformed customer experience, that you have to get to the heart of it, and you have to go so deep that you're either rewriting it or retiring it in favor of something else or moving it into a simulated environment in the cloud, which I still think is eventually meaning rewriting it elsewhere. Although so far, the little bit I've looked at the survey data, some think that what they've done to move it to the cloud will be their longer term solution. And there again, 5 years from now, somebody else might be calling that just enough modernization. But no, I think, it's been ongoing for a while. People are dealing with it, but the issue is bigger now because the goals are bigger for these transformed processes to be automated.
Yeah, and I think you're right that the goals and the expectations around this, that the customer experience expectations are usually to be able to provide real-time response in order to help drive the customer to the next stage in the process. Whether they are looking at being able to go and buy something, whether they're examining their portfolio, whatever they're going and doing, the customer doesn't care that you have a 47 layer stack, that they're progressing down through and back up through in order to be able to fill in the fields on the next page on the their mobile device. All they want is, give me the answer and give me that answer right now. And if they're not going to get it from your company, then they're going to seriously consider moving elsewhere. They'll move to a different bank. They will go and shop from a different store in order to be able to go and get that real-time information. And to stress here, while we're using information about mainframe modernization as an element in this, if it's not not mainframe modernization, there's client server out there. There are the first multi-layer web applications that are developed, and those are all still out there and running, I think, and they're running in production. And that means now that it's not as simple as going and building a new technical stack next to it, and then one Saturday evening just switching everything over. This drives large scale programs to make sure that the entire shift is being handled in a way that does not cause any issues for the customer, does not break the business along the way, and for many companies also does not introduce legal or regulatory risk that their messing up is going to cause them to lose customers, sued by partners, sued by shareholders, receiving letters from their friendly local regulators.
Right, right. And security is often the one that bubbles to the top on this issue in particular. It may be that, the mainframe security was secure enough for how it was somewhat insulated, but if you now are going to, make it cloud native, which, I'm a fan of the modernization of the development environments so that you can actually re-engineer these monolithic applications, and or even those things that are somewhat modularized but still running on the mainframe. The more you expose them, it changes the security game a whole nother level, right? And that one, in pretty much everything we survey right now, security bubbles to the top. Pick your topic, but it plays a significant role in this modernization conversation as well, and that leads to other regulatory and compliance concerns as well.
Yeah, well, that isolation and the hardware and software, security frameworks on the mainframe have been a superpower for the mainframe for a long time. And so as these efforts take place to better integrate the mainframe as part of modernization into the rest of the environment, you have to make sure that you're not losing anything along the way. These are the risks that are raised by opening up.
To get back to some of the other comments that you made beyond the security issue is the concept that there's a lot of aging systems out there, right? I mean, born in the cloud has had a lot of birthdays. The mainframe's just the first of many modernization efforts that, as we really start to bring edge computing and some autonomous systems and radically shift business processes around some of these technologies, some of those cloud things that were built in the early days are not far behind the mainframe or some of those intermediate client service systems, to where, as an automation executive, you probably need you may be dealing with the mainframe modernization bottleneck right now, but you might consider what other ones surround you. And as you said earlier, Tom, if you have no mainframe, you might have a modernization platform sneaking up on you that you haven't thought about yet. Maybe there's something in a client server thing that was bolted in front of the mainframe years ago to just enough modernize it, right? That itself is aging. So we don't want to beat the mainframe modernization to death here. It affects automation, and so do other aging systems. So there are lessons to be learned here, and time where early warning signs should be telling you maybe you're not on a mainframe, but what's your oldest system, and when will that one slow you down? And when will someone tell you to modernize that?
Yes, exactly. Whether or not you have a mainframe, there is the oldest production system that you have out there, and that may or may not be the biggest bottleneck that your organization has on transformation, on making the improvements to the customer experience that's going to help your company grow and thrive. As an automation leader, rather than looking at this as a one-off, I've got to go, I've got to go and I've got to assign people from the team and we're going to have to follow through this modernization effort. These efforts are going to just keep coming at you. Look at this as being able to go and build up a playbook that you can execute when they come for modernization of the mainframe. You can execute it again when they come for going after some of the early generation Windows-based client server systems that are still running out there supporting the back offices. Think of this not as one more project that you need to do, but how do you build up the knowledge and skills in your organization so that this becomes a part of the practices that you use in order to help your business thrive?
You're not out of the woods just because you're not running a mainframe, because even to understand in our stack, what's the age of the systems and how do they interact with each other, and where's the next bottleneck coming from as we want to drive forward on a new process here or deploy a new technology there are pieces and parts that are old, even if they're not mainframe, unless you're a 3-year-old company and you bought everything new, right? Or you're 100% SaaS and it's all someone else's problem and you have all modern tools at the moment. I mean, you're probably the rarity if you're in that camp. Even if you don't have mainframes, you've probably got old systems surrounding you somewhere. And if they haven't been the bottleneck yet, they very well could be with the next transformed process that your customers demand or the business folks strategically decide is that next place for them to differentiate. And that it's going to run over one of those ancient systems, even if they're not as ancient as a mainframe.
And I think it's also worth highlighting here that in these transformation efforts, technology itself is a component, but it's not the only component. These efforts succeed in part because good decisions are made and there's good execution around implementing a new technology, but they also require changes to business processes. They require cultural changes, and in some cases, even changes to organizational structure in order to be able to go and accommodate them. So this isn't technology only solution in this. Rather, it's a recognition that there's technology as an element, but as technologists, we need to participate in the larger holistic program in order to help our businesses shift forward and to be able to better operate in a new world of real-time responses to customers, straight through processing of transactions, more tightly integrated flows of information and transactions with partners.
Tom, we were talking earlier, even if you don't have a mainframe, if you want to transform a certain process, some of your business partners or suppliers may have their own roadblock that they can't play along under your new digital process the way you want them to. So that roadblock may not be in your company, but it may still be in your way.
Exactly. Dan, when do you expect to have all the data in on the survey?
Well, I mean, the survey's closed. I've just only started to about halfway through the first pass of looking at it. So it's I got to set it aside for a moment because it's the first time I'm launching another one right on the back of this one. The other one is my update on the broader workload and orchestration market. So I got to get that one collecting data before I can finish consuming this data. But it'll be a couple of weeks before I can review it with all the sponsors who participated. So the report probably publishes in December. And, it's possible we'll take an episode and talk more about some of those data points once the report is available. But yeah, we're probably looking at early December for publication on that one.
All right. Well, as we sit here and talk about this in the last week of October, we recognize that December isn't that far away. And I expect we'll come back to this and related topics around it as well. Any final thoughts about this, Dan?
I think it's possible that we're going to be touching this in other ways in coming episodes. For example, if we start to talk about in depth some of the AI automation tools, well, there's a whole class of tools that have been developed by a number of different companies to help this process of modernizing the mainframe. And as we said, there are other older systems that might be the focus next year or the year after. And things we're learning now about this environment will help us with the next aging environment that needs modernization. So, I think this theme is something that we will touch on, and just the process of bringing automation to the modernization is its own little subcategory that I think will be a highlight. And those class of tools can really help you get through it. They might be spot tools, but they get you across the finish line faster. So I guess there's automation everywhere, right? Or the possibility to automate everywhere.
Yes. I want to thank everybody who has listened to the podcast today. We are hitting our groove, and we expect we're going to be posting every couple of weeks. You want to see some more and find out a little more about what Dan and I are doing, you can look at em360tech.com, or you can always follow Dan at the Enterprise Management Associates website. And if you have feedback and questions on the podcast, the email address is eaepodcast@emausa.com. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Dan and Tom, for your insights on today's topic, and thanks to our listeners for joining the Enterprise Automation Excellence podcast. If you're a technology or operations leader looking to enhance your automation strategy, stay connected for more expert insights. Visit enterprisemanagement.com to learn how EMA can support your automation initiatives, and check out more episodes for in-depth discussions and industry trends.